Your program needs to see what vendors don't self-report. In security, we all heard the saying, trust but verify, and it should absolutely apply to your vendors too. Questionnaires are 100% trust. You need to also verify. It's partially because we know some vendors lie or stretch the truth.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. Welcome to today's live session on what your TPRM vendor won't tell you until after you sign. I'm Marshall England with Fortify Data. I'm joined with my colleague Ken Ballard. Thanks again for joining today. For those unfamiliar with Fortify Data, we are an automated cyber GRC platform that unifies attack surface management capabilities. So our own scanning for internal, external, plus cloud. We also have controls and compliance modules to manage GRC and compliance management, as well as third-party risk management, where if you're unaware, it's not just questionnaire-based, but also related on vendor scans. This is not intended to be a demo. We will cover this content. We do have a new demo coming out probably in a few weeks. We have launched a whole new UI with a lot of new capabilities, new modules, including contract management for third parties, privacy assessments, and then some expanded AI assistant capabilities where you can better interact with the data, and then the data will just kind of help prioritize what you should do or what you consider. So today I have with me Ken Ballard here, who's also at Fortify Data. He also acts as part of our TPRM managed services team. So he's kind of gone through evaluation of other vendors in previous roles and works on the third party side with many of our clients. So Ken, I will turn it over to you.
Hey. All right, great. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm really glad you're all here because this session is a little bit different than the typical TPRM webinar. Usually when people talk about third-party risk management, the conversation quickly becomes about platforms and features, dashboards, AI, and so on. Today, I want to talk about something more fundamental. I want to talk about what actually matters after implementation, because that's when your reality really shows up. That's when you start to find gaps in your TPRM program and possibly even the platform that you have. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to discuss 5 areas that you need to address in your TPRM program to meet practical, regulatory, and executive scrutiny. And you're going to want to stick around for the 5th area. It's absolutely crucial, and no software application can do it today. So just as a little enticement. Now, although, as Marshall said, Fortify Data sells a TPRM platform, we think it's the best TPRM platform. But this webinar is more about what your platform that you may have or are considering may not do, and what you may want to do to supplement or to ask and try to resolve. Most TPRM software evaluations, they focus on features and price. What makes sense when you're buying, the software. You're checking off boxes of features. Can it send questionnaires? Can it store evidence? How does it calculate risk? But here's the problem with that process. Features don't really tell you whether the program is actually going to work for you. A tool can have every feature on the market and still fail when it matters. And why is that? It's because many buyers optimize their decision process on the wrong criteria. A good TPRM program should help you make better, faster, and more informed risk decisions that are unique to you and your company. Your software should help you make those decisions and not just be a document management system. Most products, and therefore most demos, they look the same. TPRM, as you probably know, is a very mature area for software. You'll see a lot of dashboards, color-coded scores, heat maps, and so on. everyone starts to look the same, frankly. And software companies are forced to show you something flashy that sounds important. Um, and frequently it just isn't. And that's where demos can create a dangerous illusion. We do demos all the time and we try to be careful with this. So the wrong question is, which tool has the best demo, of course. But what you really need to dig into is which tool produces the outcome that your unique program requires. And that is what you need to focus on. So these 5 areas that we're going to talk to hopefully will help you refine your program, evaluate solutions better if you're in the market for one, or help you figure out how to supplement your processes if you're in a system that doesn't achieve what you need it to achieve. Okay, so first outcome. Uh, your vendor risk data needs to be defensible, not just available. And this is a huge distinction. There are, as we said, these TPRM system scoring platforms. They've been around a long time, and they all provide you with data. The challenge is, can you defend your conclusions using that data? Suppose an auditor asks you why you rated a critical vendor as low risk. Can you explain and defend your decision? Can you show the evidence? Or do you just point to the score? That's the problem with scores. We know this because we also give a score. Scores are not evidence, they're a conclusion. You need to be able to explain the underlying factors that went into that score. Why is the score going down? Do I care about those factors? Do I have access to enough details to understand if those changes matter to me? And then what am I going to do about it going forward? We see this all the time with our clients. When a vendor gets breached, everyone, including our client and you, wants to know what vulnerabilities were there and when did we know about them. You can't just say, well, the score dropped. You need to have specific details in order to defend your decision on that vendor. And so here's some questions that you should ask yourself and your TPRM platform. First, where does the data come from? That sounds real simple, but it's really not. Is it self-reported? Is it third-party threat intelligence? Is it direct scanning, or is it just publicly available repurposed information from tools like Aaron and Shodan? Some first generation platforms still do this. They won't tell you how they came up with their score. In fact, it's kind of treated as proprietary and they hide it in a black box. And we would argue that you need to know where the data is coming from and be able to drill in at a sufficient level of detail. That's the only way to know if it's important to you.
Yeah, I'll
I
just
saw
chime
you
in here.
pop up. Yeah.
I'll just chime in here real quick, Ken. Yeah, so Fortify Data, we do have an open methodology about how we get our data on vendor external profiles. So for some of the organizations that are only leveraging questionnaires or a spreadsheet tracker of the questions that they send out to certain vendors, right? There's definitely you want to supplement with the external attack surface of a vendor, right? It's something between the point in time assessment that you're having somebody answer a questionnaire on versus getting something that provides a continuous view of potential vulnerabilities within the vendors and therefore your ecosystem that could leave you guys susceptible to some kind of incident. So I just want to go on that. There are different weightings within the methodology around different characteristics that result in those scores. Many other vendors, they won't tell you what they are. We do. Ours is available between web app scans, network scans, breach history, dark web credentials, things like that. We've got a whole document around this if anybody's interested. But I just thought I'd chime in here with that.
No, that is perfect, and it just depends on your organization, the industry. We have a lot of higher ed in the platform, for example, and sometimes dark web is not it creates too much noise for them. So they can tune it down and make the whole score more relevant to them. Going on, the second item, if a regulator asks you to explain why you rated this vendor low risk, can you specifically show them? Is it just the score or the grade? Can you show them the evidence? Can you export that evidence and trace every finding down to the level of detail that is convincing for that auditor? And can you explain how, as Marshall said, how the methodology comes up with that number? So, or grade. The third item is the evidence attributed and time-stamped. So it's not just knowing that somebody has, a jQuery problem on an asset. Is it just aggregated into a black box score? Because black box scoring, as we just said, is dangerous. If you can't explain how a score was generated and how it aligns to your risk requirements, then you can't defend it. And if you can't defend it, then you don't actually have risk intelligence on a vendor. You just have a number. My friend ChatGPT, all of us have seen this. It says, "Here's the uncomfortable truth." I'm kind of getting tired of that phrase. That seems to be where the thing starts all the time. But the point being is, if a vendor scored a B minus, that's not a defendable statement. Why? What contributed to that? And do I care for our risk profile and the services that I'm getting for that vendor? Or is it just a generic score? Because you're relying on generic scores, you're really just evaluating risk generically. It has very little to do with you. And this is the trap many organizations fall into. That's all you could do before. You can do it differently now. They used to, you don't make the mistake of generic data being defensible data. Defensibility requires attribution. It requires timestamps, exportable evidence, and the explainable methodology that is unique to do. Without those, your generic score is just cosmetic, and when it matters, it will fail under pressure. Your program needs to see what vendors don't self-report. In security, we all heard the saying, trust but verify, and it should absolutely apply to your vendors too. Questionnaires are 100% trust. You need to also verify. It's partially because we know some vendors lie or stretch the truth, or they have the wrong person, like the salesperson answering questionnaires. But it's also because vendors, things go wrong. They lose employees, key employees, and they don't take care of things as well as they should be. Or they think they're doing something, but they actually aren't. And again, we see this all the time. Our clients tell vendors of systems they aren't even aware of. Their SOC 2 looks great in higher ed. I know we've got a bunch of higher ed people on. Their HECVAT looks great. But we will find an obscure development system that has an old Apache system on it and is horribly vulnerable. Does it matter to you? Is it on the same network segment as your critical data? That's something that SOC 2s and questionnaires, HECVATs flat out miss. Questionnaires measure what vendors want to tell you. Technical assessments take that and measure what is actually true. In a commercial world, we see this all the time. A vendor will answer, we patch all critical vulnerabilities within a week. But you find a system that has a 300-day-old jQuery vulnerability. You only get that data by looking for it specifically. The fact is, the security world moves so much faster than what a questionnaire can actually do for you.
Just real quick on that too. I don't know if anybody else is tracking it, but CISA just came out and updated their patching guidance. to now include, is it exploitable? Is it being exploited? Is it public, can it be found from a public facing service? And that has to be done within hours and days now. That just came out, I think, last week as a CISA update for civilian and federal agencies. And we all know that generally industry follows that, shortly thereafter.
Right.
Specifically for higher ed or anybody else with federal research grants or funding, expect that to come down as well in terms of how they think about patching. It's just, something to tell third parties, also be aware of for your own environment.
Excellent. Thank you. Here's some questions uh, to ask your TPRM platform vendor. First, what methodology do you use? Do you rely on self-reported answers? Are they just open source internet breadcrumbs and signals from Shodan and Aaron? Or are they direct technical interrogations of the vendor's assets? Those produce very different levels of confidence, and you need to know if there are KEVs and CVEs, as Marshall said, on those particular vulnerabilities. Second, what happens when questionnaire answers conflict with technical findings? Do you even notice? Does your TPRM platform even tell you? And third, does discovery happen automatically or only when you're doing annual reviews? Because discovery only happens during questionnaires, potentially. If it does, then you've got blind spots. So you want to look at a big company like Microsoft. Well, is that technical analysis for all of Microsoft, or is it just for the services and products that you use? You need to be able to look at what you're using. So, and it's not just the big companies like Microsoft, it's payroll, it's investment companies, many vendors have multiple services and products. You need to care about the ones that matter to you. Organizations breached through vendors usually already had a TPRM process in place. That's been proven over and over again. And so just because you have a TPRM program doesn't mean that your vendors aren't going to be compromised. You've got questionnaires, you did the reviews, you looked at policies maybe. So what's missing? It's a process that shows continuous truth that is grounded in current day facts. So don't rely on questionnaires only for any vendor that has, certainly for any vendor that has any access to data or facilities or is mission critical. If you do, you're missing the evolving risk. I guess leads us to the next topic. When looking at a vendor once a year, it's just becoming very risky. Things change too fast. And what can change, as we talked about, there can be disruptions in your vendor's staffing. We see this with scores dropping suddenly. They could be migrating to new systems and tuning down security temporarily. Probably want to know that. They may have a periodic process of fixing problems, and you just happen to hit, do your evaluation 2 weeks after they patched everything and fixed things up. We see all these things, and it does show up in the vendor assessments. Annual assessments, they don't work anymore. When infrastructure changed really slowly, that was fine. But that world, as we know, is gone. Today, vendor environments are changing constantly, just like yours. New assets appear, cloud infrastructure changes, acquisitions happen, fourth-party dependencies change. And you should know about that sort of thing. Knowing what the risk was 4 months ago based on a questionnaire is just, or even a technical assessment, just is not helpful today. Ask these questions. How frequently is the data refreshed? Is it monthly or are you doing it annually? Second, if a vendor introduces a severe vulnerability tomorrow, how quickly do you know? And third, what triggers reassessment outside of the cycle? Is it automatic or is it dependent on analysts knowing something? Manual reassessment does not scale. And manual detection is slow. The faster threat velocity today means everything's a little bit more dangerous, and periodic reviews don't really work. So these issues have actually become regulatory, as Marshall said with CISA's recent update, but we see it everywhere. Regulators are increasingly expecting ongoing oversight rather than annual reviews. For credit unions, the NCUA, which is their regulator, they emphasize ongoing risk-based monitoring. The New York State Department of Financial Services and the FFIEC for banks, they are increasingly pushing to go beyond just periodic review. And of course, Europe, who has, arguably more rigorous privacy regulations, such as DORA, they explicitly mandate continuous oversight of information and communication vendors. And so that means point-in-time assessments are becoming non-compliant. Your TPRM program needs to be built for where the future of regulations are headed. We know you're dealing with budget constraints. In your program, your TPRM program has to scale without scaling your team. Your vendor count grows, but your headcount doesn't. All right. You may have started your TPRM program with 100 vendors. We have some that start with as few as 20, 10, 20 vendors, but they grow. You want to look at more. Somebody needs you to examine someone new. So now you've got 100 and soon 400 and then 800. Does your team grow 4 to 8 times? Probably not. It shouldn't have to. So what happens if it doesn't grow with the wrong program? You get backlogs, you get delayed reviews, and most important, burnout. A lot of organizations, TPRM, people that do TPRM, they get burnout. And heaven help you if you lose that employee and nobody's doing TPRM, because that will grind things to a halt in your security team. You need automation at every stage of the TPRM process so that you can scale. So again, ask yourself, not just your vendor, but ask yourself these questions. Where does human effort concentrate? Usually it's chasing questionnaires, that is chasing your vendors to get you the questionnaires back. It's chasing evidence, reviewing those documents, updating the risk ratings. Those are just mind-numbing things of yesterday that TPRM programs, that make TPRM such a awful thing to do. I mean, if it's not automated, it can be really mind-numbing. So you need to automate your workflow.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in just on the automation effort. Certainly here at Fortify Data, we're including more automation, particularly around the vendor onboarding and lifecycle research for a vendor. So that reduces the manual effort related to your team having to chase and request information from vendors or get information and then review it. There's a lot of automation in that. Again, you can ask other vendors the same thing. They're likely implementing some more automation as well within that aspect to help with this scalability issue.
Mm-hmm. And it should handle the whole workflow process, or as much of it as possible. I mean, we deal with workflow every day. Workflow is very unique to each company and to each department and group of people. So it needs to be flexible enough to address the full process. Do the business units put in the vendor? Do you put it in? How does all that work? Do you send an initial questionnaire to the vendor to understand? Do you send it to your business unit? Those are the things that we work out during the onboarding process so we get it right out, as we're implementing. So second question, what percentage of the assessment is automated? Are you looking at results or actually just running assessments to get results? You should not be doing any of the low-level activities of even 3 or 4 years ago. You shouldn't be doing things like that. And third, ask yourself, if our vendor count doubles next year, what happens to the workload? The answer can't be we're going to have to hire some people because that's just not scalable. And organizations just don't pay for TPRM, from a headcount perspective. True scalability means workload grows slower than your vendor count, and that is what you want. So the biggest problem with automation is questionnaires. Questionnaire fatigue is real. Both sides hate questionnaires. Your team hates chasing vendors. Your vendors hate filling them out. And for vendors, every customer seems to ask similar questions, but in slightly different ways. Frankly, that's why SOC 2s exist. They are built for the vendor so they don't have to answer your questionnaire. And that's fine. That's just fine. SOC 2s are really helpful for third-party risk management. But again, you have to read them and glean what is important to you. The fact that they have a SOC 2 doesn't mean much. It matters what the details are. What trust service principles are included in the SOC 2? Is it enough? What are the exceptions in the SOC 2 and how does management address them? Is the scope right? Are you looking at the right SOC 2? Sometimes that's hard. What vendors are they depending on that fourth party risk? You may not use AWS, but you might have 10 vendors that do. Maybe you want to look at AWS. Your platform needs to address these specific issues to your risk criteria. AI can help tremendously. You don't have to read a 200-page SOC 2 anymore for higher ed, the questionnaires. Your system needs to extract the relevant data automatically, then allow you to ask pertinent questions.
Yep, I was going to say same thing for HECVATs, same thing for ISMS for those that you are able to get that information, but multi-tabbed spreadsheets are something that can be automatically reviewed nowadays as well, especially with new additions around AI usage within your vendor environments, as well as then the follow-on privacy assessment issues related to that. So just want to chime in on the HECVAT component.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, outcome 5. This is the one that no one talks about and that nobody really does yet. We're working on it, but it's complicated because it is very specific to your organization. What happens when your vendor gets compromised? You need to discuss and document this before it happens. That is risk management. Can you shut the data flow to the vendor? What if it's payroll? What if it's 2 days before payroll happens? Or if it's healthcare? Or as we saw, there's some higher ed, Canvas, the student information system got compromised when? Like 2 weeks before finals. So what did that do? A lot of higher ed uses Canvas. It it was chaos. It was really chaos. How do you manage your testing platform going down just before finals are going to be issued on that platform? Can you do it manually? Have you ever thought through that? And in a broader sense, you've got the whole notification process. Can you easily replace a vendor? If you're going from ChatGPT to Claude, well, that's pretty easy. But payroll system to payroll system, yeah, it can be done. There's a lot of them out there, but it takes months. So frankly, TPRM tools don't help much here today because it is so specific to you. But you need to think about this in advance. Doing it under pressure results in slow response, and that can be a career-ending move for you. So, questions to ask yourself for your critical vendors. Well, let me tell you about our critical vendors at Fortify Data as an example. We ask for the BCP documentation and we review it. And we ask them we look for what are those recovery time objectives, those RTOs, and what were the test results. So, third, and this is where it can get more complicated. So maybe you can't do it for 400 vendors, but you should do it for your critical vendors. What contractual obligations exist? Are there notification windows in the contract? Are there recovery commitments, SLA penalties, things like that? These things are becoming more important, even if even if you've got to work with your legal team or HR team or your operations team. It's not just the getting all the data together and saying this is done and good. Those critical vendors, you need to know and that's the fourth item. Ask yourself, if this vendor went down for 72 hours, what is your response? Who makes decisions? What needs to stop? Does the timing matter? What continues? Is there a run book? Things like that. If those answers are unclear, then you're exposed.
This reminds me of the classic tabletop exercise, coming
It
to
is.
vendor
It
risk
is.
management.
It is.
Scenarios A, B, and C affecting vendors, E, F, and G.
Yep.
How do you respond to
It is
keep
like a
services running?
mini tabletop
Yeah.
exercise. You need to know what type of compromise matters, what kind of data, if they, what data did they lose, what matters to you, what doesn't. So, and here we go again, the uncomfortable reality. For many organizations, if a critical vendor fails, the real plan is, well, we're going to wait and see what they tell us. And sometimes, frankly, sometimes that's unavoidable. There may be no substitute, there may be no redundancy, but at least ways you've thought through it. That is risk management. You've discussed it. And ideally, you've socialized it with your team and your executives. So when a vendor gets compromised and you're dead, you don't want to be the person that says, well, their score looked pretty good a couple months ago. You want to be the person that can say, we've already talked about this and here's our plan. Visibility alone, through any TPRM program, questionnaires, assessments alone, they don't prevent outages or bad things happening to you, but preparation helps determine this level of resilience. Okay, so we're coming up to the end here. So let me summarize. The 5 outcomes or the 5 areas to really concern yourself with. Is the data defensible? Can you defend your risk decisions with evidence? Can you go beyond does the platform go beyond just self-reporting, just questionnaires? Can you see what vendors are not disclosing to you? Can you detect material changes automatically through continuous monitoring? Can the program grow without linear headcount growth? And last, are you prepared when a critical vendor fails? If your TPRM program cannot deliver these 5 outcomes, you really don't have a modern TPRM program. You have a workflow system and a document management system. And so where does this leave us? So this is my only plug for Fortify Data. This framework, continues to heavily influence how we build our platform. We want to give you defensible evidence. We want to allow you to create your own scores, direct technical interrogation of your third party's assets on a continuous basis. We want to help you automate at scale and plan for operational resilience. We are working on that. And as you can imagine, it's a little bit difficult, but we are working on that. So that's what we aim to deliver. And whether you work for us or not, I hope today gave you a better framework for evaluating your program. And thank you. Thank you for joining today. Any other questions, Marshall?
Sure. I'll add one, and this goes back to kind of the tabletop scenario, right? Run through this with critical vendors in mind, some not so critical vendors, things like that. When's the best time to think about doing that? And then who should that get communicated up to, from that perspective as you run through these things? Is this for an annual audit? Is it something you think about during a new vendor onboarding? Is it, renewal time? Obviously, contract management is part of that as well.
Yeah.
In your experience,
I
when do you guide
so
on
I
this?
so I see two workflows. One is the your annual questionnaire. We have some clients that send out questionnaires every quarter or every 6 months, but let's say it's annual. And then you have the continuous monitoring. So you should be looking at, scores at a high level and then dig in deep to find out where those are. Those are the two workflows. So I would do it at the questionnaire level. But it's got to be something specific. You look at the SOC 2, you look at the scores, but you need to talk about the resilience as well. You need to know, as a security person running a TPRM program, we see this all the time, and it's hard. It's not hard, it just takes time. You need to know when the contracts are due, right? You got to know, is it September 15th? Is it, December 31st? Because that's when you can negotiate better terms into the contract, right? And get the vendor to do the things that can sometimes be really hard in the middle of the year. So I would do it. I would start looking at a vendor. And in fact, in our platform, we tell you when we've got a contract management module. We tell you 2 months in advance when a contract is due, and you can start working on it and negotiate with that. So
Or
yeah,
you can set the alert to your time frame if you want to
that's
know
right.
6 months out or 5 months out. It's all customizable. That
Yeah.
was the only question that we had. We are a
Okay.
few minutes over. Thanks again
Yeah.
for everybody that attended. If you would like a demonstration, quickly add it in the chat, or if you want follow up. Again, thanks for your time today. Ken, thank you so much for the
Yeah.
presentation. I hope
All
everybody has a
right.
great. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.